even if a person just makes one or two inappropriate social media videos, in this type of inappropriate, like where you're making fun of patients, you're a healthcare professional making fun of patients and expressing misogynistic views, that suggests really bad judgment. And it's very likely that that bad judgment extends well beyond making and posting two social media videos. Hey there, fellow nerds. Welcome back to another episode of The Present Illness, the podcast where two physicians try to make sense of a world that is a little febrile and definitely underdiagnosed. I'm Arghavan Salles, a surgeon scientist and your friendly neighborhood doom scroller in residence.
And I'm Alyssa Burgart, an anesthesiologist and bioethicist who tracks news and health law like their EKGs, full of spikes and surprises. The Present Illness is where we dig into public health, politics, culture, and ethics with a scalpel in one hand and a meme in the other.
Huge thanks to everyone who's listening, with extra love, as always, to those who subscribe or follow us on the various platforms, and a warm welcome to anyone who just stumbled in from Match Day.
Match Day, it's such a big day in medicine.
It's a huge day. I mean, I still remember it. I'm sure you still remember how it went for you.
What do you remember about your Match Day?
I remember multiple things. So I remember the building where we had Match Day, by the way, no longer exists. At the time, there was a building there, and now it's grass on our medical school campus. But I remember the building. I remember being it was in the lobby of that building that they had Match Day activities. And I remember I had matched into surgery at the same institution, and one of the surgery residents came over and, congratulated me. That was really lovely. And I remember Stanford did at the time, I don't know if they still do, but they had a dinner for for graduating students and their families. So my mom and I went to whatever dinner, and it was just really nice. Oh, I won an iPod too. Actually, I just remembered that. They had like some sort of drawing at the time we had iPods, because it was.
Do you want to explain what an iPod is?
An iPod is like an iPhone, except it only has the iPod part of the iPhone. It's only for music. And so I won this like fancy iPod. Like had a lot of storage. It was like a big deal. I don't remember much more than that because I gave it away shortly thereafter because I didn't really need it. So I don't really remember too much about it. But I remember it was like expensive, and they just randomly gave away like 2 or 3, and somehow I won one. Anyway, so, those are the things that I remember from Match Day. I personally, to the extent that it matters to me, matched at my 4th ranked place, which is generally not considered a success.
Interesting.
Yeah. But
also, like, it's kind of funny when Stanford's your 4th option.
Well, I think what it says a lot about is my inability to read cues from the programs that I was interviewing at and my poor playing of the game. I was delighted to have matched at Stanford,
Sure.
and I'm really glad that it worked out that way. But at the time, I had been here for med school and wanted to theoretically maybe try something else. But I think I just really did not interview as well as I had hoped, or whatever. I mean, something happened, or the communication after the interviews, whatever. It's a silly game. And I just didn't play the game well. And in the end, I'm really lucky that Stanford ranked me high enough to match. Because if they hadn't, then, who knows? I might have tumbled down through my rankings or not match. So,
Sure.
Anyway, that's what I remember. What do you remember from Match Day?
Well, I was very pregnant when, by the time Match Day came around. Match Day is always kind of mid-March, and my first baby was due in June, and I was like, oh my God, all right, Sierra wants to be on the podcast, so we gotta, here you go. For all the viewers on YouTube, you can enjoy this little tiny dog who is like, oh, you're talking about a baby? Hold me like a baby. So I attended Loyola University Chicago, which I had a great medical education there. I loved Chicago for a time, but I didn't want to live there forever.
Mhm.
And so I actually didn't really want to stay there, but because I was pregnant, my partner and I really looked through all the places I interviewed, and like we were going to have to move. Either I was going to have to move like when I was about to deliver a baby to then find a new OB and find a new place to get care, or I was going to need to stay at a program in Chicago or try to match at one of the other programs in Chicago. And then I would at least know where the bathrooms were. So I actually ended up ranking Loyola first for my
Mm.
match. It was one of those things where I interviewed at some other place. I actually interviewed at some places in California that I really wanted to come home to California,
Mhm,
but I
mhm.
was like, it is just not I
The
just can't
timing was
move.
difficult.
I
Yeah,
can't move while I'm about to have a baby.
yeah.
And, which I think was the right choice for lots of
Mhm,
reasons.
mhm,
So I ended up matching there, and, a huge support for me in medical school was that I joined the local, like, there was a knitting store in our town, and so
mm,
I would go to the knitting club, and, like,
mhm,
that was the one thing I did besides study and, like, hang out with
mhm.
my husband was go knitting on Wednesday nights at this place called, it was called, oh, I was about to just say the wrong place. Chicks with Sticks. It was called Chicks with Sticks, and it was owned by these lovely women in Forest Park, Illinois. Um, and I made so many good friends there, and all of my knitting friends actually showed up to match day, which was amazing.
Aw,
So they were all there. They were thrilled that I matched at Loyola, which meant I was going to stay in the knitting group.
yeah.
I'm still friends with all those people, and yeah, so it was like I remember I had, when you're pregnant, you don't own that many clothes that fit, and so, like, I
Mm,
had a specific dress that actually fit me
mhm,
that I chose to wear. Anyway, and then my kid was born early, so
mm.
she was supposed to be, they were supposed to be born after I graduated from medical school, but they were born early, so I actually carried my baby across the stage. They were 2 days old, I think, when I graduated,
That's
so it
amazing.
was a raucous time in life.
That's an awesome story, though. I do agree, it seems like it was wise to stay given the timing of things. So well done you. Well done past you on good decision making.
Thank you, thank you. And I did eventually. There's things I miss about Chicago, but I was also very happy to, come to Stanford for my pediatric anesthesia training. It was great.
That's awesome. Oh, I just thought in case I'm assuming most of our listeners know what match day is, but in case anyone's listening is like, what even are you talking about? Match day is the day that medical students across the country find out where they're going to do their residency. And in something that makes absolutely no sense, it's a computer algorithm that determines where people go. And so that's why it's such a big deal because you find out where you're going to spend the next 3, 4, 5, 7 years of your life. In a decision that you only somewhat had input into. So, anyway, it's a really stressful time for medical students. And, most people match, some people don't match, meaning that they don't have a job to go to starting in June and they have to scramble for that. So, it's just
Which
high
it
tension.
used to be called the scramble, and now it's called soap. So
Yeah.
now I'll hear the kids talk about soaping.
Yes. Yes. And I still call it scrambling, but
I mean,
I
it'll
start
always
to
be a
learn new
scramble to
things.
me.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway,
well,
so yeah, congrats to everyone who had a successful match, and for those who didn't, that's not the end of your journey, and there are so many things that can still happen for you and that will give you a path to the career that you want.
yeah, I have every year I think about some of the people I know who did not match, who were some of the most brilliant people I had ever met. So it's also like so many reasons why people don't match. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a weird game. It's such a weird medicine's weird. Medical culture is weird, which is why we have a
Very.
podcast to talk about it because it's weird.
Indeed it is. Um,
Well, listen, regardless of your match status, we are glad you are here. As a note to new listeners, we oftentimes talk about topics that can be kind of intense, they can be a lot. So you may not want to listen with your little ones. And if you need to take a break from this one, we totally get it.
Absolutely. Shall we get into our first topic for today?
Well, Arghavan, you know what I'm wondering? Because I know you are online. I know for a fact that the two of us have been inundated with some doctors that are on the internet who, I'm going to be honest, probably shouldn't be on the internet.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. I am guessing you're talking about at least that medical student. I mean, there's multiple examples, to be fair. This is not the only person, but there is a medical student who has gotten a lot of the worst kind of attention for their posts in the recent few weeks.
I would say has earned the worst kind of attention. So the person that, neither of us knows this person. All we know about them is what is online. We've seen their videos, and there's a student who supposedly goes to or went to Mayo's medical school, which is called the Alex School of Medicine, and what we understand from at least what reporting there has been, supposedly this person was hoping to match into psychiatry. And apparently, this person had a really big following. My algorithm had not shown me his content, but I'm guessing that there are good reasons that the algorithm, the gods of the algorithm, knew that he was not for me. And unfortunately, he made several videos which ended up going viral because they specifically were incredibly misogynistic.
Mhm,
And in particular, he had two videos that I'll talk about today. And one of them, he is, I don't know, pretending that he's making the video from the perspective of a woman's groin. And as though he is doing a speculum exam or some other kind of an exam, and makes some very disparaging comments about women's anatomy and about the experience of examining a person who has a vagina, and was horrible. And the words that he used and the tone that was used was incredibly dismissive of the idea that of any patient who would ever want to go see somebody for an already uncomfortable exam.
mhm. Was
Um,
it it's been a minute since I watched that video, but there was a video I saw where he was talking about inserting a Foley catheter. Is that this one or is that a different one?
that was a nurse.
No, no, there's that too, but there's one that Nick made about inserting a Foley catheter because he's talking about basically not being able to do it because it's very vague. It's using the lyrics of a song, but or not a song, a trending audio, but it makes it sound like he can't find the urethra because there's excess tissue or whatever, which to be clear, like every vulva is normal. That's not a thing, but that's what was portrayed in that video. I don't know if that's the same one or a different one.
Honestly, there were multiple videos, so I I will he's pulled them down. There's
Yeah.
certainly many other ones that are online. Um, and then the other video that ended up garnering a lot of attention was a video where he talked about, basically, girl, you're so crazy. They write books about you, and held up the DSM-5, which is
Mhm.
the manual that is used in psychiatry to diagnose people with mental health disorders. And so, again, this very casual and misogynistic way of basically saying women are crazy, which, I mean, gosh, a tried and true idea that
No
many a
one's
man.
yeah, no one's ever said that before. Women are crazy. There was another one that I saw, and I know you're right. He's got many videos, and I certainly haven't seen all of them, and the algorithm has spared me that as well. But there was another one that was about yeast infections.
Mhm.
It was another like some kind of trending audio or sound, and I think the thing that got to me was the look on his face, like just the disgust, that you can say he was acting consistent with whatever the audio was, but to have that reaction about a condition that affects women patients is offensive and disrespectful and very harmful to patients and their trust with healthcare.
It also makes me very curious what his curated algorithm was. Like, I'd be so curious to get Nick's phone and be like, what does the algorithm show you? Because a year ago, the algorithm definitely showed me an entire gynecologist's office getting fired for making fun of patients' discharge, for example.
Right. So that one, in case people didn't see that, it was a clinic in Santa Barbara, and um, they had for folks who might not have ever been to a gynecologist because they're men or for other reasons, there's an exam table like in any other clinic, and then there's that weird paper that is used as a barrier on the exam table. And so in this clinic, the staff at the clinic had taken multiple photos of that paper after an exam had been done. And often there's like ultrasound gel or whatever other fluid. Sometimes you have an exam where they're injecting water or saline up into the uterus, for example. I mean, there's lots of reasons for there to be fluid left on the table. And they took pictures of these tables and acted like these were gifts, I believe was the word that they had used, left them by these patients. But it was to make fun of that aspect of gynecologic care. And it really was not, I mean, I don't know what was in the minds of any of the people who were participating in that, but it really came across as making fun of women and suggesting that women are gross and that our bodily functions are gross. And so all of the staff who were involved in that, to my knowledge, were fired. And this is actually what I said in the video that I made about the student you're talking about, because that was only in September. And I was like, did we not learn a lesson that
We
we
did not.
shouldn't be making fun of patients? Okay. But what's interesting too about it is that somebody in my comments was like, well, but those were real patients. And he's not talking about real patients. And it was like, are you really trying to make this distinction right now?
Also, I have said for many years, like, I remember when I was in medical school, and it was when there was just Facebook, right? Like, there was no Instagram had not been made, like, TikTok was a twinkle in somebody's digital eye.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember being told by our professors, like, "You all better get off of Facebook because it's gonna ruin your careers, and
Hmm.
you're never gonna get a job," and all this sort of stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm going, "What are people putting online?" Um, and I think that we've done a real disservice in not making everybody in medical school learn a little bit about online ethics.
Yeah.
I mean, as an ethics instructor, I
Yeah.
actually used to do some training in the ethics course I taught, but then there's only so many minutes that you can teach people,
Yeah.
and so I really had to prioritize things that were definitely going to impact all of our students as opposed to just some of them.
Yeah.
But now, with people who, even if you're not making the content, if you're consuming the content, we want clinicians to be, more deeply engaged in that. And the fact that in 2026, the Mayo Clinic, one of the finest medical schools in the country,
Hmm.
had this medical student
Hmm.
become this famous,
Hmm.
and nobody thought, does he know that we're all watching his videos?
So I do want to talk about that because I'm not so sure that there had not been any previous interventions with this student.
Oh, there may have been.
Yeah.
They were clearly ineffective.
Right. Whatever was there clearly didn't prevent this from happening. But I want to point that out because I do think there are people who um and I don't pretend, like you said, I don't pretend to know what else has happened for the student in their
No.
career or even
Mm-mm.
what other videos they've made that may have been problematic in the past. But what I do know is that a medical school, I have never heard, let me say, a medical school go from a controversial post on social media to expelling a student within a couple of weeks. I literally never seen that happen. And it makes me think, again, not having any insider information, that there were previous transgressions, whether online or otherwise, that had made a track record for this student that he likely, I don't know, but I'm just saying, based on the facts that we do know, it seems very likely that he had previously been warned. Perhaps he had previously been given remediation plans. I don't know, but schools do not take expelling a student lightly at all. It is a
Mhm.
major decision, one that can lead to lawsuits if it's not adequately thought through and justified.
Mhm.
So I'm saying that because a lot of folks who don't work in medical education may think this is a case of so-called cancel culture where
It's cancel culture.
yes, where there was one or two where this person maybe made, in their view, one or two, joke videos that weren't that funny and now lost their whole career. And I can understand why people would think that maybe is not appropriate. But one, I don't think that's what happened. I think there is very likely a history of inappropriate behavior and that this was the last thing that was in a string of incidents that led Mayo to make this decision. And
And
two,
and for folks who don't know, because we haven't actually said that yet, our understanding based on what has been reported is that this student has been expelled.
oh, yes. Thank you for stating that. And so the second thing I want to say is that even if a person just makes one or two inappropriate social media videos, that in this type of inappropriate, like where you're making fun of patients, you're a healthcare professional making fun of patients and expressing misogynistic views, that suggests really bad judgment. And it's very likely that that bad judgment extends well beyond making and posting two social media videos. So even if you're tempted to say, well, it was just one or two videos, I encourage folks to stop and think because anyone who went through all the steps of conceiving of the video, filming the video, editing the video, posting the video, many stages at which they could have thought to themselves, maybe this is inappropriate, but didn't. And then was met with backlash when the videos were posted and then never apologized, that person, I'm not talking about this student in particular, but someone who goes through those steps is likely making bad choices in many other arenas in ways, in this specific context of the misogyny demonstrated in these videos, in ways that are likely to harm patients.
Well, and the other well, first of all, I completely agree. And the other aspect of this is there are many people who manage to get into medical school who may have these same thoughts, who
Mhm,
may have these same feelings, who feel this way about women as patients. Most medical students seem to be capable. Let's say there's a few, right? I mean, looking online, there is no shortage of misogyny. There is no shortage of people who seem very happy to explain away what this student chose to
mhm,
do.
mhm,
Let's say there's one or two in like every medical school class, right? They know to not say it out loud
mhm,
and they know to not say it on the internet.
mhm,
So, from my position, we are lucky that this student showed us.
mhm,
They showed us their poor judgment. They showed us how much they dislike women and don't care about women. They showed us how incapable they are of being like, geez, maybe I should do a little ethical reflection
mhm,
on what my external role as a healthcare provider should be. Because the moment you enter medical school, you are being indoctrinated into this profession.
mhm.
And this profession has a lot of problems.
Yep.
But each of us needs to be figuring out, how do I want to be? Who am I becoming by my actions every
Mhm,
day in this profession? When I'm committed to patients, I understand that the way I act outside of work is reflective of what people can expect from me as a doctor. I'm not like a different
yeah,
person in the hospital and out of the hospital.
right.
Like, I'm still me.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what patients see. And I think it's look, I get it. We all like to make jokes. And I mean, I love to make people smile and laugh, and you're very good at it, better at it than I am. So I get that motivation of like, oh, haha, this might be funny. And you don't get to having the size of a platform that he had, which I believe was, again, the accounts are gone, so we can't see anymore. But I think it was 500,000 ish that he had on
I
followers
mean,
on
that's a
TikTok.
that's a lot of followers.
That's a lot of followers, and I don't know how many he had on Instagram, and so you don't get there without, like, having made really engaging content, and so kudos to anyone who can do that, truly, um, and there is this responsibility that comes with being in healthcare. Even as a medical student, you are representative of the profession, and one thing that's become really clear, even more clear, I would say in the last 5, 6 years, is that patients have a lot of mistrust in the medical system, and I don't see that it's getting better right now over
No, it's
time,
getting
despite
worse.
yeah, despite a lot of efforts that many people are making. And videos like this contribute to that problem. And if you go watch, I want to just call out, shout out to Dr. Jennifer Lincoln, who's the
Mhm.
first person I saw talking about these specific videos. But if you go look at the comments on her videos, or if you look at, there's another case that you kind of alluded to earlier that has been getting some attention recently, of a nurse that had to do with a Foley catheter placement. And you go look at the comments of the videos, like Dr. Femwell Millhouse has made a couple videos about that, and Lindsay Shelton, Scrub Hacks, has made videos. And you go look at the comments, and there are so many women who are talking about this being the exact reason that they are
Mhm.
concerned about seeking healthcare. They're stressed out, they're
Mhm.
afraid, and in some cases have avoided healthcare for a long time. And others have experienced sexual abuse, um, outside of healthcare settings. But then when you're going to have these kinds of exams and procedures that are very intimate, it brings up that trauma. And so they need to feel safe, and they need to
Yeah.
feel like the people caring for them respect them.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that that is a feeling that everyone has right now. And when we see these videos, I get it, tempting to say it's just a joke, but just like it's just locker room talk when we're talking about the president talking about how he can assault women because he's famous. When you're famous, you can do it. Um, these are the same types of harmful rhetoric that go much deeper than it's just a joke. The joke, if there is one, and first of all, like I should say,
It's
none of
not
it
a
was
joke.
funny. Like
No.
a joke should be funny, just bottom line,
Well,
like basic standards. But beyond that, not only are they not funny, but you are normalizing the disrespect to female anatomy and to women patients that makes us want to avoid healthcare. And that's the very last thing we should be doing as healthcare workers.
Yeah. And the person whose work also really want to highlight is Stephanie Tillman, who you can follow at Feminist Midwife. And Stephanie just completed her dissertation and got her PhD talking about medical rape culture and the fact that, pelvic exams are just one of the many ways, or like any sort of pelvic procedures, which includes things like Foley placement, it includes things like rectal exams, that these are spaces where the behavior that this student is demonstrating, and the nurse that you mentioned and that I mentioned earlier, that person had a video showing them opening a Foley catheter using music that was incredibly sexualized
Hmm.
about doing a procedure, and put something about Gen Z getting a Foley placement,
Right. That
which
was the
by the
thing.
way is children.
Yes. Gen Z goes down to, I believe, age 14 right now. And
Yeah,
so
gross.
this
Ew.
person was sexualizing a medical procedure, one that no one wants to have. First of all, nobody is looking forward to a urinary catheterization. And also, you usually will have that done either because you're having a procedure and you're not going to be able to control your bladder for a while, or maybe you're in the intensive care unit and you're sedated. And so you don't have control over your bladder. There's the people who are having a Foley catheter, it's not like you just women, I should say, it's not like you're just having it in an outpatient clinic as part of your routine care. You are probably in the hospital for something relatively serious. And
Yeah,
I mean, not that it matters how serious it is, you still shouldn't be sexualizing any medical procedures, but certainly that was very, very distasteful,
yeah.
disrespectful, offensive. And it's an objectification of women in the healthcare setting. And I just, someone else said this on one of my posts earlier, like, as a physician, this never, ever, even remotely for a millisecond occurred to me to sexualize a patient or a procedure
No.
for a patient in any arena at any time in the many years that I've been in healthcare. And it makes sense that some men like that would think this way because they don't think of us as people to begin with. It reflects, again, a deeper issue of the objectification, in that case, with the sexualization video, of the objectification of women. We exist to serve a man's needs, not as independent humans with our own concerns and needs and health issues. So, yeah, I agree. I think I'm disturbed by how many of these we're seeing. And I will say,
Uh-huh.
somebody had written a comment on one of my videos saying, well, are you going to call out all these other people who use that same audio? And they put screenshots. I can't really tell what's going on in these other videos, but they look like they're mostly people talking about how hard it is to place a Foley. Again, I can't really tell. And I will say it can be challenging. It can be challenging to place a urinary catheter, which is called a Foley catheter, in female patients. It's certainly more challenging. Like, finding the urethra on a female patient is more challenging than finding it on a male patient. That's just
Yeah.
facts. Um, and it's, I think, not at all disrespectful to talk about the fact that it can be challenging. And so
Uh-huh.
I'm hoping
Uh-huh.
that that's what was being done in those other videos. I don't know. But that's different from making fun of female anatomy, which is what was being done by that medical student, or sexualizing a medical procedure, which is what was being done by this nurse. And so I think some people may be confused about, like, what is okay and what is not okay. And I think it's,
Yeah. I mean, I I looked up the other lyrics to that song, and
huh.
I will say that trending audio should not be used for anything that has to do with anything medical.
Oh, the one that the nurse used?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. Agreed, absolutely.
The Well, and the other thing I think is also important to talk about, obviously, you and I are talking a lot about women and the experience of why women are afraid to come in to get care, and I think it's also worth noting. I mean, I'm just thinking back when I was an intern, I did a urology rotation. It was one of our required rotations, and so that meant that, like, in the middle of the night, I had to be the person who
Mm,
had to put Foley catheters in for people who couldn't go to the bathroom for whatever reason, and sometimes like the really big ones for like irrigation and things like
mhm,
that. And I was traumatized by having to traumatize these people,
mhm,
and, like, I was using lidocaine, and I was
mhm,
I was trying to do it in the most trauma-informed way I could. Um, but there are any procedure that we are doing, especially in an area of a person's body that is typically private, not typically exposed, it's just such a sensitive time, and this is also the way that medical rape culture shows up and harms everybody. It
Yeah.
just anytime that, to your point, like, I have never once gone to put in a Foley and had any sexual thoughts because that's really gross.
Yeah. And that's just it shows you where you're thinking about the patient in a different way from how you should be thinking about a patient. There's no
Yeah.
context in which we should be caring for a patient and thinking about them in that way. One last thing I want to say about this topic is there was a video I saw this week that was men accompanying their partners, female partners, to gynecology visits. And I guess this is a thing that women will film their partner trying to figure out what the stirrups are for. And
Oh,
and they would be like, "Is this for your elbows? Like, do you move them? What is happening with these?" And then every time in this sequence that I saw anyway, somebody had done a compilation. Every time they were told that it was for their feet and that you sit or that you're facing up, not laying down, um, the men would be like, "Huh?" And then a few of them like tried to put their feet, and they were like, "No." They like quickly just crossed their legs because it feels so vulnerable. It's such a
yes.
vulnerable position to be in. I think it was helpful to see, like for them, it was helpful to feel like, oh, this is this is bad. I don't like how this feels. Because I think a lot of men don't realize physically what it is like to be in that position.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to minimize like what we experience as women, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not great. Like you have to really trust the people who are there to take care of you because you're in a position where you can't really defend yourself if someone were to do something inappropriate. Anyway, I don't want to go too far down that line, but I did think it was funny to see the men being like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
Yeah. Um, and then we'll put a link to this in the show notes, but Chloe Nasra Lee, who's a physician, who's a psychiatry resident, wrote a piece that's in MedPage today about this medical student and the videos they made. And it says that medical student's misogyny isn't funny. Nick Bomel's cheap shot at female patients harms trust in doctors. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes for folks who want to hear a little bit more. Um, for one, I am a huge fan of second chances. I am a huge fan of people living through their mistakes and claiming accountability and growing and becoming the people they need to be. But no one has the right to be a doctor. And we have to protect our profession. We have to demand more from people who want to be in this profession because patients should not trust us if we let people who behave this way into our ranks.
absolutely agree." And I think it's none of our business what else has happened with this student, and
No,
we have
I
to
don't want
just
anything bad to happen to him.
right. No, me neither.
I
And
mean, he got kicked out of medical school supposedly, which I think is sufficient.
right, and I think we have to some degree trust that the folks at Mayo Clinic who made that decision understood the ramifications and made it for a good reason. I
Mhm.
have no reason to doubt the decision makers at Mayo Clinic, right? Or
Mhm.
at any other medical school, to be honest. Like they take this very, very seriously. So I think that's the thing to remember. We may never hear what else happened, and it's really none of our business. But the important thing is that everyone learn from this and understand the ramifications of what you may think is just a joke, but when the joke is at the expense of a group of people who are going to be your patients, it's not worth however many internet points you're going to get.
I completely agree.
So, is that anything else you wanted to share about that one, or shall
I
we
think
move on?
I think that was more than enough about these boys on the internet.
I agree. Okay. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about this week is about ICE. And we've talked about ICE multiple times, but they just keep being newsworthy, darn it. This weekend, the president announced that they were going to deploy ICE into airports. So, as folks probably know, we've had a government shutdown largely over the fact that there is not widespread public support for funding DHS and specifically for funding ICE, although ICE already is funded separately. And so the Democrats have multiple times proposed funding bills that would fund TSA and other agencies, and the Republicans have rejected all of those attempts. Within the last few days, the president had said that he like explicitly said that he did not want any bill to go through until funding bill to go through until they pass the Save America Act, which is a voter disenfranchisement act. So he's basically held TSA agents and travelers hostage until legislators will approve a bill that will literally disenfranchise millions of people in this country because we're not here to talk about the Save America Act, but I'll just say briefly that the part of the requirements of that are that people have a birth certificate that matches their passport or other there's several different versions of which IDs you would need, but typically the things that they're asking for are ones where women who have changed their name because say they got married would not be able to meet those requirements. And also people who don't have a passport, which is quite a lot of people in this country, would have great difficulty meeting the requirements. And it costs money to get a lot of the documents that they want people to have in order to prove that, we are citizens. So it's all under the guise of trying to stop fraudulent voting, which is something that happens extraordinarily rarely in this country. And in fact, just this week, a man who is a Republican who had been supposedly very concerned about election fraud was himself arrested for election fraud. So the people,
Oh, come
I
oh.
know. So the people who are
Oh.
so concerned about election fraud, my take on it is that they're concerned because they're the ones trying to do it all the time. And they think
My
that,
think Methinks he doth protest too much.
right. And they think that the rest of us are doing it too. But the data, when you look at the data that people have studied, voter fraud, it's extraordinarily rare that someone who is not eligible to vote would try to vote in this country. So it's really a non-issue, but the Save America Act is the latest version. There was a version of this last year. There've been multiple versions of this, and each time they have not made it through the process, so they've not entered into law, but they make a few changes and they try again. So that's the version that's currently being discussed. And so the president had said to the Republican legislators that he did not want them to agree to any funding bill until the Save America Act is passed. Now, of course, Republican legislators also, I think, are not necessarily all in favor of the Save America Act because the data suggests that the people who are most likely to be disenfranchised actually are people in so-called red states. So it's really not to their benefit. Anyway, separate conversation that we can have another day. But the point is, the result of all that is that TSA agents have been working for weeks without pay, and many of them have left. I think it's over 400 TSA agents have resigned in this period of time. And those who are showing up are doing so in good faith. Like they are not getting paid. Some of them, I've seen news reports, are sleeping at the airport because they can no longer afford the transportation to get back and forth to their home. And because there's this shortage and because of the lack of funding, we're seeing much longer wait times at some airports. Like Atlanta is one of the major ones that has had just extraordinarily long lines, so much so that this week they apparently hired live music to entertain folks waiting in line. Yeah, they're recommending folks get to the airport 4 or 5 hours in advance for domestic flights. And so as all this is happening and travelers are getting more and more upset, the president says, we have a great solution. We're just going to send ICE agents into airports. Now, ICE agents are not trained to be TSA agents, right? So, what is the benefit of sending them there? The Tom Homan, who is, part of our federal government, right, was asked about this last weekend, and it was very clear from his interview that he actually didn't know what ICE agents would be doing. Somebody had seen the reporter had seen Trump's statement and was asking him, "So what will they do? Will they be looking for people to deport? Will they be doing like TSA screening?" And he was like, "Well, they're not trained to do the screening. Like the when your suitcase goes through." He's like, "They're not trained to do that." And basically, like it was just very clear he had no idea what they would be doing. And then very soon thereafter, they deployed ICE. I thought this was going to be one of the taco things. Trump always chickens out. I thought this was going to be one of those empty threats, but like very soon after, they deployed ICE agents to 14 different airports, and there's all these videos all over the internet of them doing nothing, like drinking a coffee, having a burger, looking at their phones. Because what can they do? They're not qualified again to be TSA agents. And there's one of this ICE agent who happens to be a white man, and he's standing behind a TSA agent who happens to be a black woman, and she's, screening somebody. And somebody had posted this and said, "Wow, you have a white guy getting paid to supervise a black woman who's not getting paid." It's a great look. Um, And so for TSA agents, right, they continued this week to show up and work for nothing. And then they have to coexist with these ICE agents who are showing up and doing nothing, but getting
And
paid
but
to
getting
do
paid.
nothing.
Oh my god.
It's like a way to ruin TSA and to ruin airports and air traffic for everyone. And the reason I want to mention it is that air travel is so common, right? Like many of us travel routinely. I thankfully travel a lot less than I used to, but I do have a trip coming up. And ever since this administration, I have been worried about any travel, to be honest, even
Yeah.
before ICE was brought
Yeah.
into the airports. And I have been traveling with my passport. I'm a naturalized citizen. I have been traveling with my passport since, February ish of last year. And you can imagine folks who are on green cards, folks who are on temporary visas, folks who um, may be indeterminate status currently, or folks who have deportation orders may feel very, very anxious and reasonably so about any air travel now. And it's not clear, people have asked Trump if these ICE agents will be doing immigration enforcement at the airports, and he said, "Yeah, why not? They can do it. They're good at it." Blah, basically, like he hasn't said no, they won't be doing that. So now we've added these mobsters really to places where they should not be. And I don't know if you saw this video, but on Sunday there was a woman detained at SFO, which is our local airport, San Francisco, and apparently it was TSA who had tipped off ICE to whatever the situation was with this woman and her daughter. And there's these brutal videos of her being detained by them. And that's not one of the 14 airports to which ICE agents have been deployed currently. So not only are we seeing these really long lines that are making air travel really, really stressful, but now we all really have to, regardless of your status, have to be worried about what is ICE doing. I mean, we know even if you think you're safe because you're a U.S. citizen, we know ICE has detained numerous U.S. citizens, and it's not like if people remember the lawsuit that went all the way to Supreme Court, and Brett Kavanaugh was like, it's fine if they detain people based on how they look. And if they happen to be US citizens, they'll get released. And that's not exactly how it
After a
works.
brief after a brief interaction. It's no big deal. Whatever. Send them to CCOT, it's fine. It'll just be temporary.
Right. Just temporary little trip to El Salvador.
Listen, I have said it before and I will say it again. We are living in the dumbest timeline.
Well, that is for sure. I want to talk about a couple things related to this. So one is that many people are rightfully pointing out that this is all very consistent with what's in Project 2025. So Project
Mhm.
2025 does say that they want to basically privatize TSA, that they want to get rid of the unions for public workers. And this can very well be part of that effort, right? And we know, again, from Project 2025, that they want to privatize a lot of government functions, including TSA. And so how do you do that? You make it impossible for that thing to work. We've seen this with the NIH, right? Got
Mhm.
rid of tons of people. By the way, I saw this week a report that said 95,000 scientists have left our federal government in the last year. Like that is an
Talk about a brain drain.
astounding loss for science in this
It's
country.
terrible.
Anyway, so this is part of that process, right? Like make the conditions totally disfavorable. TSA agents leave, you remove their union, more of them leave, and you say, well, gosh, we can't really function anymore. We're going to have to hire out these services. Oh, guess who has a company that can hire out agents for this? Me, myself, and I, and my brother, and my sister, and my aunt, and whatever. So like it's all just everything this administration does is to make themselves more money. And this is another example of that. And another thing that people have rightfully brought up is that the more ICE agents are normalized as being just kind of part of our daily lives, the more or the easier it becomes to deploy them to polling stations for the election in
Mhm.
the fall.
Mhm.
And it's worth noting, in case folks haven't seen these images, that the ICE agents in the airports are carrying weapons,
Mhm.
like openly carrying rifles and so on, for no reason. There is no need for that at airports. And so you can imagine those folks at polling places acting as intimidators to make it harder for people to vote at the same time that they are trying to eliminate mail in voting At the same time that they have already said that basically you can't rely on a postmark anymore because the post office can choose to, yeah, you may not have heard the story, but the post office can choose to hold on to your mail for however they want. There's no longer a requirement that they stamp your mail the day that you tried to send it. And so if you were going to do a mail in vote, mail in ballot, even if you sent it in weeks in advance, it might not get delivered and your vote might not count. And they're, of course, defunding the US Postal Service. There's all sorts of stuff going on there separate from what it has to do with voting. But a lot of the things that we're seeing now are a setup for what they intend to do to make it harder, in particular for folks in specific states like California, to vote in the election. And so that's, I think, really important for people to understand. It's not just about long lines to get through TSA or whatever. And also worth noting, because I've seen some people making these points about, well, we don't want illegal immigrants here, so if they can get them at the airport, all the better. And
Oh, shut up. Oh, God, shut up.
yes, and in general, I don't think people who are here illegally are eager to interact with the system, which is what you have to do when you go through TSA, even in normal times without ICE. So it's really not a high yield location to be looking for people who are not here with totally legal status.
With, like, documentation that lets them get into the airport?
Correct.
Why are these I mean, I know why. I know it's because they wanna make our lives fucking miserable, and, like,
Yes,
I wanna I wanna go back. I wanna go back to having a functional government. Like, it wasn't great, it needed improvements for
absolutely.
surezies, but, like, this is not it, folks.
A couple other things I want to point out. One is Steve Bannon has explicitly said,
He's not dead yet.
I know, nor is he in prison somehow. It's amazing. Um, well, it's not that amazing because they pardoned everybody. But I wanted to tell you exactly what Steve Bannon had said about ICE. He said, we can use this, ICE helping at airports, as a test run, a test case to really perfect ICE's involvement in the 2026 midterms. And he said this in conversation with somebody named Mike Davis. I think we should have ICE agents at the polling places. So it's not, that's not theoretical. Like they are actually saying out loud that this is what they intend to do. And so basically, ICE is turning into a personal security force for the president to carry out whatever he wants. And that's part of what happens when you hire very quickly and you hire people with questionable educational status and give them minimal training. And the only thing that they're taught to care about is what the president wants. Okay, so, not to leave people so down, I do want to share some tips because
That's sort of our vibe, though.
I know it is. I know. Apologies. But I do want to give folks some tips that I've seen from immigration lawyers and other sources if you do have to travel. I think the most obvious recommendation is if you don't have to travel right now, just don't. It's not maybe worth the hassle. Even putting ICE aside, the strains on TSA. And then we saw also this weekend that tragedy at LaGuardia where the plane ran into a fire truck due to air traffic control miscommunication. So we have genuine security and safety issues in terms of air travel and air traffic control because we already were understaffed from with air traffic controllers, and then Doge did what they did, which is to make everything worse than it was. And Sean Duffy, who's our reality TV Secretary of Transportation, if folks remember a couple months ago, put out that video of how we should be changing air travel. And the answer was travelers should dress nicer and maybe we need a workout area. So, we don't really have someone who's paying attention to the real problems with air travel, unfortunately. So there are safety concerns that I very much have and have had for a while. And then we've got the long lines because of the TSA shortage. And now you add to that ICE in airports. It's just a recipe that's not tasty. So I think if you don't need to travel, don't. That's the most obvious advice. If you do need to travel, these are some of the tips that I've read. Turning off biometrics on your phone, which is your facial recognition, or if you have a fingerprint thing, turn that off before you go into the airport. Some have suggested deleting your social media apps so that even if folks get access to your phone, they can't see what you've been posting or liking or engaging with. Going through TSA either with your phone in airplane mode or with your phone off and just in your bag. Um, Printing your boarding pass so that you don't need to use your phone as you're going through. And you can do that, by the way, at most airports in the entrance area at departures. You don't need to have a printer at home to do that. Declining face scans as you go through TSA because they're
Oh,
building.
I love to decline the face scan. Oh, I love it. Oh, have you done it?
No, I usually just do it. I drop my mask down
Oh,
and I go.
no, no. I just go, "Oh, I don't consent." And I do it with a smile. But what I do is I just make sure that I have my ID
Yeah.
out, and I go, "Oh, I don't consent to that.
Mhm,
Thank you so much."
mhm.
And then they're like, "Well, then we're gonna need your ID." And I'm like, "I
Right
have
here.
it."
Yeah.
Because I want that person to have to look at my face. I'm so pretty. Look at me.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I'm gonna start doing that. And then write down emergency contact phone numbers before you go so that you don't need to get into your phone if something does happen and you need to be able to call someone. All of that is true for everyone. In particular, if you are undocumented, if you have temporary status or you have a deportation order, please don't travel. Um,
Yeah.
this is just not the time. I mean, obviously you have to make your own decisions, but this is a terrible time to be traveling. Also, if you have a green card and any convictions, there are certain ones that trigger this. But I don't know which ones. So if you have any convictions, maybe don't travel right now. And then DACA, there's been concern that DACA folks will also get
Ugh.
detained. It is important to know your rights or when you're traveling or anytime you're interacting with ICE. And that includes you don't have to unlock your phone, you don't have to talk to them. But as was pointed out in, I think it was from KQED, this article I was reading, your choices are a little bit more limited in the airport because, yeah, you can say, I'm not going to tell you, but then they can just pull you out of line and hold you back and then you miss your flight. So it's a little bit trickier to be able to actually assert your rights in this context, unless, of course, you have a lot of flexibility with your travel and you don't mind missing a flight. But it's just a much more stressful environment, obviously, to interact with ICE. Having your immigration documents, whatever they are. So if it's your green card, have that with you, obviously. And like I said, even as a citizen, I travel with my passports. Having your passport, if you have one, is helpful. If you're not, if you're a natural born birthright U.S. citizen, and you look white, because even if you're have a birthright citizen and you look brown, you can get caught up in this stuff because they're racist. But if you look white, um, then being ready to film is helpful. You can't interfere with ICE activities, or else you might get detained. But you are absolutely entitled to film and record, and that's really, really helpful for documenting what's happening. It can really be supportive of those who get detained unlawfully, and hopefully one day, by the way, there will be a reckoning for all of this, and this documentation will be really important. Um, I think those are the key. I'm just double checking my notes. I think those were the key recommendations that I've seen. Um, so I'll put a link or a couple links into the show notes for folks to look at that. But just think really carefully about whether this is a time for air travel.
Well, you know what time it is, Arghavan.
What time is it, Alyssa?
It's time to take 2 and call me in the morning.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I have something I'd really like to share. Can I go first?
Okay, tell me.
Okay, so there is
Tell me.
a comedian and actor named Drewski. I hope that's how
Okay.
he pronounces his name, Druski, who does satirical skits. And he put one out yesterday that is just chef's kiss. Uh, this is a black man. Drewski is a black man. He is in full makeup and wig, everything to look like Erica Kurt. And the video is called something like, America, conservative women in America. And he's
I'm sorry for people who are listening, you don't know, like, the face I'm making is out of control. Okay. Okay, tell me everything.
so there's like it's so good. You just have to watch it. So I will put the link in. But he's at the beginning, I think it was that scene where she was at like whatever event that she was at, like soon after Charlie's death, where they had those like massive sparklers. I don't even know what they're called, but like indoor fireworks that they were doing. And she like comes out in her suit. So he has that scene. And he has the scene. What I thought was the best was he's like sitting down and talking to somebody. And I forget even what he's saying, but it's like that same thing that was in one of her interviews where they do these close ups of her and he's wearing contact lenses, so he's got the blue eyes. And she has this like honestly, they kind of like satanic eyes as she's like looking at the camera, and he nails it. he's got that same look as he's like talking about God and the Bible and whatever. But he's like, "Ugh," like eyes wide open. He's like staring at the
Sounds
camera,
scary.
and they do close. It is very scary. And then he's got random scenes of him singing in the car to Katy Perry, um, just as for fun. Um, and anyway, it ends with a scene where I don't know if folks saw that Erica Kirk, made some comments recently about how men are just being treated so horribly in our society, and they need to stand up for themselves, especially, she said, quote, white male men, unquote. White male men. Yeah, I really needed that
As
extra
opposed
male.
to
Like female
white
men.
female men?
Yeah, it's kind of like transpositive. If you think
Sure.
about it.
Okay.
But
Great.
anyway, so
We'll take it.
yeah. So Drewski has this scene that he's doing, and there's a black man who's a security officer, a police officer, somebody behind him. And so as he's saying, again, dressed as Erica Kirk, talking about how white men are the ones we really have to worry about in our society. This guy in the back is making some excellent faces. So good. Anyway, I would recommend that. I might also just throw in a link to a video that he did back in September, I think it was. That was also another so-called whiteface video where he is a redneck. So throwing it back to what you just said, he's got like I don't know how much makeup on to make him look like he has white skin, but he's got sunburns and he's got like the American flag tattoos and I don't need to say more about it, but I'll put a link to that and folks can check it out. Yeah, I would recommend watching those. How about you? What do you recommend?
Well, it's not so much usually I recommend a social media video, but by the time this episode comes out tomorrow morning, so recording on March 26th, which is a Thursday, and tomorrow's Unicorn Day at work,
Ah.
which is an event that my girlfriend and I put together, which is it's a testament to my depression from 2022. Where I was so sad, and so I started wearing a headband to work that was a unicorn horn that was washable. So I will put a link to one of my OG videos about starting Unicorn Day. But I have a unicorn onesie. I'm picking up like a boatload of donuts on the way to work. We're gonna have a photo booth. We make little bins for everybody who works in the operating room so they can all have a unicorn horn. I got stickers made this year. It's turning into this big community event. This is our fourth annual. And the first year it was just me and my friend putting it all together and like surprising everyone and being like, there's a party. And now people have been looking forward to it. And I think it's just such a hard time in so many ways right now.
Yeah.
And so having a ridiculous, glittery party for absolutely no good reason, other than to celebrate the fact that it's really hard to take care of really sick kids. And I love I love the people I work with, and I love having an opportunity to like make their Friday a little better because Friday is obviously the worst day to have to go to work. This after Saturday and Sunday.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you've made this a tradition, and I hope it's a wonderful day.
Yeah, so I'll drop a video and I hope you enjoy getting a little glimpse of what it's like.
What it's like to be Alyssa, pediatric anesthesiologist, bioethicist, unicorn.
What's funny is like I am not like I mean I have tried to embrace more whimsy, but like as a resident, I was like, I'm badass. Don't bother me. I'm a tough girl. And I remember thinking I was gonna go into, like, cardiac anesthesia, and I was like, "Gosh, I'd be really good at that. I love the anatomy, you get to do cool procedures," and I was like, "Man, but the vibes are, like, not as fun."
Hmm.
And I thought, "I'll do peds." And then, you get to, like you have to know the Disney songs, and you have to be, like you can't be too serious when you take care of children. It doesn't work for kids.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
I love that.
yeah.
Leaning into the whimsy, I think, is a fantastic thing to do. Um, really, at any time. Anyway, so I think that's it for this week's episode.
We did it.
We did it once again. If you didn't like what you heard, this has been the Red Man Group podcast. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to The Present Illness. Leave us a review if you don't mind, or some ratings, and tell folks you know.
We know you liked it because you stayed this long. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. We are at The Present Illness, and you can stay on top of all of our TPI-related news.
We will, of course, be back next week with more headlines, hot takes, and doom scrolling, hopefully wrapped in some laughs.
So until then, agitate, hydrate, take a nap. See you next time on The Present Illness. Production by Arghavan, Salles, and Alyssa Burgart. Editing by Alyssa Burgart. Social media by Arghavan, Salles. And original music by Joseph Uphoff. Don't take medical advice from two random people on a podcast. This is a show for informational purposes. It's meant to be fun, and it is certainly not medical advice. Take your medical questions to a qualified professional.